The Invisible Rain Cloud, a short story about traumatic brain injury. People sometimes ask me what it's like living with a brain injury. It can be difficult to explain, but let me try. Imagine one day you woke up in a foreign country. Everything looked similar, but slightly different. You recognised your friends, your family and loved ones, but when they spoke to you, it seemed like they were talking in a different language. You're not really sure how you got here, you certainly didn't ask to come, and you wish you could just go home. Suddenly the familiar seems unfamiliar, and that's a truly scary thing. Imagine your favourite hobbies and activities. Things you used to do every day and took for granted, suddenly seeming impossible. Simple tasks that you learned when you were a child, somehow unlearned overnight. Imagine how helpless that would make you feel. Sometimes it feels like I have a personal rain cloud that won't go away. It follows me around, dampening my enjoyment of life and making even the sunniest of days seem cold and grey. Some days it's higher in the sky, some days it feels like it's smothering me, like I could reach out above my head and touch it. But high or low, it's always there. The hardest part? No one else can see the cloud. To them, I look just the same as I did before my injury. My cloud is invisible. My brain injury is invisible. My friends ask me how I feel, and they try to understand. They tell me that they forget things too. I know they mean well, but sometimes I find it difficult to hear, and I get angry. My rain cloud can turn into a thundercloud in an instant. A thundercloud that rages against the people who are most dear to me. After a while, they stop asking, and that makes me feel even more alone. When I tell people about my accident, they tell me that I'm lucky to have survived. I don't feel lucky. Lucky is winning the lottery. Lucky is good. I feel there is nothing good about what happened to me. There are even moments when I wish that I hadn't survived. But fortunately, my cloud lifts just a little and those moments pass. Although I know for some others, they don't. I miss my old life. I miss the old me. I miss not being in pain, not forgetting things, not being confused, not feeling angry for no reason. But I'm trying hard to accept the old me won't be coming back, that the new me is here to stay. I've found that talking to others who are living with a traumatic brain injury has helped. Every brain injury is different, and everyone will experience their injury in a unique way. But talking to those who are going through similar changes in their lives has helped me realise that I am not alone. Their clouds are not invisible to me, and they can see my cloud too. We help each other to keep them high in the sky where they belong. I've also found that picking up hobbies and activities I enjoyed before my injury helps me remember that deep down inside, I'm still me. I find resilience and strength in the small victories, and I've learned that the simple things in life that we all take for granted are a huge part of what makes us who we are. There is life after brain injury, and I know that with time, patience, love and support, the new me will be okay. Thank you for listening to my story.
Living with a stranger, my husband's brain injury. 2 years ago, a stranger came to live in my house. The stranger looked a lot like my husband. But while my husband was warm, funny, and caring, the stranger was cold, humorless, and distant. My husband had always worked hard, taken care of the bills, and fixed the things around the house that needed fixing. But the stranger left that all up to me. He didn't want to work. He didn't care how we would pay the rent. Some days he didn't even get out of bed. I no longer had a partner, and everything fell on my shoulders. My husband and I were blessed with a beautiful daughter, and it might sound cliche, but she was his world. The stranger simply ignored her, acted like she didn't even exist. It seemed like he only cared about himself. And worst of all, the stranger had a terrible temper. He would get angry at the smallest things, yell at me for hours because I simply asked him how he was feeling. His behavior frightened and embarrassed our daughter. There were even times I was scared he might hurt me physically. But fortunately, it never came to that. My husband had always been very responsible and social. We enjoyed spending time with each other and with our friends and family. But the stranger wanted me all to himself. He didn't want anyone to visit, and he wouldn't let me go out. I became more and more isolated. It seemed my whole life revolved around trying to hold our lives together, taking care of our family and taking care of this look-alike. It felt like I was a nurse and a parent to a grown man. On the rare occasions I did get to see my friends, I'd be desperate for them to ask me how I was feeling, how I was coping, for a shoulder to cry on. But they didn't see my pain. They only asked me about the stranger, how he was feeling, how he was coping. I felt like I was living in a bubble. I wanted to scream, to cry out, "What about me?" I wanted to run away from it all. But I didn't. I couldn't. I kept it all locked up inside and carried on. I hid everything behind a smile and tried to make things as normal as possible for our family. Because the truth is, my husband never left. The man who came to stay is not a stranger. He's the same man I met and fell in love with, the man I married and the father of our little girl. But 2 years ago, his life, our lives, changed forever. My husband is one of the 5.3 million Americans who live with the devastating consequences of traumatic brain injury. And I am one of the millions of Americans who live with a spouse or loved one who has experienced a traumatic brain injury. Overnight, I became my husband's caretaker. His brain injury affected his memory. He forgot how to do simple tasks, making him feel confused and helpless. And for the longest time, his feelings were trapped inside. But then, one day, he finally opened up to me about how he felt. How it seemed like he had an invisible rain cloud that followed him everywhere. And how the rain cloud made everything seem cold and gray. We became involved in the Brain Injury Association. He found support groups and he got help. I also found a support group where I met others who were going through similar situations in their lives. It really helped to be able to talk to other people who understood what I was going through. We still have ups and downs, and there are still days that I worry about the future. But with patience, love, and support, we are learning to adapt to our new lives together. Thank you for listening to my story. The Little Bird Who Forgot How to Fly. Once upon a time, there was a little bird who was almost ready to leave the nest. She could sing, she could collect sticks, she could catch worms, she knew to look out for cats, and most importantly, she could fly. Her parents had taught her everything she needed to know, and they knew that it was almost time to let her go out into the world to build a nest of her own. They were very proud of their smart little baby bird. But then, one day, there was a terrible accident. The little bird was down below her favorite tree searching for worms and dodging cats when suddenly a branch fell from above. The branch hit her on the head, and she didn't even have time to let out a squeak before she was knocked out cold. The little bird's dad, who had been watching from a nearby rooftop, saw what had happened. He quickly swooped down, picked her up in his beak, and flew to the hospital. The little bird slept for 3 days and 3 nights while her parents watched over her and worried, which is a very long time for a bird to sleep. On the morning of the 4th day, she finally woke up. But when they got back to their nest, it was clear that something was wrong. Her mother sang her favorite song, but she didn't join in. In fact, she didn't make a sound. Her dad flapped his wings, which meant it was time to fly down and collect some juicy worms for breakfast. But the little bird remained still. You see, while she was sleeping, she had forgotten. She had forgotten how to sing, she had forgotten how to collect sticks, she had forgotten how to catch worms, and she had forgotten how to fly. Her parents realized that their little bird wouldn't be leaving the family nest anytime soon. That once again, they would be her caretakers. And so their new, yet old way of life began. They looked after their little bird just as they had done before. And they tried to reteach her all the things that little birds need to know. But things were different this time. The little bird struggled to pick up the skills she had learned so easily as a chick. And worse, it seemed like her whole personality had changed. She was irritable, she was tired, she didn't want to see her friends. It was like she wanted to climb back inside her shell and cut herself off from those who loved and cared for her. Now they both loved their little bird dearly, and raising her had brought them enormous joy. But they were older now. They were tired. They didn't have the same patience they had the first time round. Caring for her put enormous strain on their relationship. And it became clear that they couldn't do this alone, that their little bird would need ongoing care from outside the nest, professional therapy and rehabilitation, now and in the future. One of the hardest things to cope with was that their little bird, who acted so differently, looked just the same as she always had. She looked fine. Sometimes they even wondered if it was all an act, whether she was just lazy, and they would lose their temper. But they would quickly remember that it wasn't her fault, and then they would feel incredibly guilty. Because while the branch that hit the little bird's head hadn't caused any lasting damage on the outside, the inside was a different story. The little bird's injury may have been invisible, but it was very, very real. It was the same injury that afflicts over 500,000 American children every single year. The little bird had suffered a traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury is known as the invisible injury. Because just like the little bird, individuals with a brain injury often have no outward signs. But perhaps it should also be known as the secret injury. because it may surprise you to learn that brain injury is not just one cause of disability in children in the United States, it is the leading cause. Each year, an average of 62,000 American children sustain serious brain injuries that require hospitalization. Some will make a full cognitive recovery, but for many, their lives will be changed forever. Children living with traumatic brain injury can experience problems with memory, concentration, and communication. They may also suffer from anxiety, depression, and mood swings. And for tens of thousands of American parents, their child's brain injury means a reversion to the role of full-time caregiver. Traumatic brain injury impacts the daily lives of over 5 million Americans and their families. It's time that more was done to raise awareness and to support those living with TBI, their families, and caregivers, and to help our little birds fly again.